Good morning, everyone. My name is Hana. I work on the AppExchange, as Sunir mentioned, and my team is responsible for bringing on new partnerships to AppExchange. So we work with ISVs, developers, entrepreneurs, anybody who wants to become a partner, we help them onboard. And being at SaaS Connect today, a number of you probably are partners or customers of Salesforce already. So, I'd be remiss to not start by saying thank you to you all for your partnership, for your support. Thank you to SaaS Connect for the opportunity to be here. And most importantly, thank you to all of you for taking the time to be here and let me share my story with you. So I mentioned, again, most of you might be customers or partners of Salesforce. So if there's one thing that we do that you might know of, it's events. We do a lot of events. And as someone who has been on the event circuit for quite some time, I usually get up and talk to people, not a stranger to presenting things like this, but when I was asked to speak at SaaS Connect, I gotta admit I was a little bit nervous because I've never spoken to a room full of just partnership people who live and breathe this, who have so much experience in building channels and ecosystems in SaaS. So it truly is an honor to be here, but the real reason why I was nervous is because Sunir kind of alluded to this, but I'm not a partnership person. So, you're probably thinking, what is she doing here? Like, why is she talking to us? Which is a valid question. But by trade, I'm a marketer. So, when I was asked to speak here, I thought that I was going to come and talk about AppExchange, talk about how we built it, and, over these 13 years, what have been our best practices that we learned. And I thought I was going to be able to show you all the cool marketing slides that I've created. So one like this about how our growth has been, great over the past decade from 0 to 6 million installs. And again, many of you may see your logo on here, so you're welcome for free marketing. Another great marketing slide. So why is the AppExchange bigger than just an ecosystem? How is it impacting the world that we live in today and creating jobs and impacting GDP? Again, another amazing story here, but this is really what we call the money slide in marketing, right? So this is what I live and breathe on every day, and this is what I use to talk to partners about the value of becoming an AppExchange partner. But all marketing jokes aside, when I was talking to Sunir to prepare for this, I understood that the theme that he was really trying to come across was talking about journey, talking about experiences. How did we all get to this point in partnerships? So to say the least, my talk turned for the better, but it took a hard left. And so today I'm going to talk to you about my journey, my personal progression from a career in PR to where I am now today in partnerships, and 3 key things that I've learned along the way. There's the build. All right, so I want to start off by giving you a little bit of background on myself. So I mentioned that I'm a marketer. This all started when I took a job, an internship right out of college at a PR agency called Outcast. Now, back in the day, they were focused on working with up-and-coming tech companies, and I'm glad to see that they still do that to this day. This is a snapshot of their website right now, and they still work with emerging companies to help them tell their stories. So I'm at this, internship. It's my first big girl job out of college, and the first account that they put me on was this little enterprise software company. It was, they're making some noise. They were shaking things up. You guys may have heard of them. They're called Salesforce.com. And this was actually the logo that the company had when I started working with them in 2006. But back then, I didn't really understand this concept that I was introduced to. It was called the cloud and cloud computing. And again, I didn't really get what it meant at the time, but little did I know that that introduction to Salesforce, that introduction to the cloud was really going to shape my entire career for the next 13 years. So again, I'm at this agency, I'm in PR. About 6 years go by in my tenure at Outcast, and I reached a pivotal point in my career. And I like to call this my quarter-life crisis. I was kind of not sure if I wanted to do PR for the rest of my life. I wasn't sure if this was a thing for me, so I started kind of asking a lot of questions and, really thinking about if I wanted to do this, because if you aren't familiar with PR today, it can be a very stressful job. Now, think about it. You're personally managing a company's reputation and their public perception. And you're constantly negotiating with media and press to get them to cover your companies. So it can be really stressful. And it's kind of a running joke in the PR community that every single year that the top list of stressful jobs come out, and PR person is inevitably on that list. This is the one from 2019, and there it is, PR director, right in between firefighter and police officer. So I'm gonna let that sink in for a little bit, right? Typically PR people are not saving lives, but to look at the amount of stress that it's caused and it's surmountable to someone who's running into a burning building or in the line of fire, it takes a lot of toll on you. So again, I'm stressed out, I'm in this quarter-life crisis, and at the time, I actually stopped working with Salesforce. So Outcast and Salesforce, they parted ways amicably, no bad blood. It was, people grow apart in relationships, and we stopped working together. But ultimately, it was that relationship, it was that amicable breakup that really led me back to the resolution of my crisis. And so what did I do? I took a job at Salesforce, of course, why not? So I took a job, I was still in PR, but I was leading PR for the AppExchange, for our partner programs in general. This is actually the Facebook post I put up there, hope the kids like the new girl at school. But this was really my first foray into partnerships. And, I wouldn't have gotten out of that crisis I was in if not for the relationships that I made in working with Salesforce as my client. So that really takes me to my first lesson learned in this career progression, and it's around building and maintaining good relationships. So people often forget that PR stands for public relations. So the relationship aspect is very important in this. They put it in the name, so it has to be important. PR people are constantly pitching their stories from their companies to press to get them covered. But the challenge is, if you're a PR person, that reporters, they get a ton of email. They get a ton of pitches from PR people every day. And so how do you rise above the noise? How do you cut through the clutter and get your company coverage from these reporters? Well, you may have guessed it, but it's because of the relationships they build. All of the PR people that I know have been great at their jobs are doing so because they've taken the time to make relationships with the reporters they pitch. They understand what they cover. They understand how do they want to be contacted. They understand kind of what are their personal interests that they can put into a pitch. So by taking that extra effort to build a relationship instead of making it transactional and making it a one-off thing, they've been able to be very successful in their careers. Now, if you look at building relationships and how that applies to partnerships, that's really a no-brainer because a partnership is a relationship in a business context, but still, it is a relationship at its core. And I mentioned I work on the AppExchange, onboarding new partners, talking to people who want to become partners, and what I've seen is a trend that I like to call repeat AppExchange partners. So, and what that means is I've talked to a lot of people who maybe back in the day, they launched an app on AppExchange, and for whatever reason, they've left the ecosystem, whether it's they sold the company, successful exit, what have you. But fast forward a year or two, and they're back in the ecosystem, whether they've started a new app or they've joined another partner company, but they're continually coming back to AppExchange and banking their businesses and their careers on it. So this is a photo of a panel I moderated at our event, Trailhead DX, with a bunch of partners. And the woman on the far right, her name is Jennifer. She is the CEO of a company called Metazoa. And they just launched their app on the AppExchange last year, right before this event. But fun fact about Jennifer is that back in the day, in 2006, she was one of our first partners. She worked at a company called Dream Factory and launched with us when we were on the app, or when we launched the AppExchange. So to see her kind of come back and to see this trend of a lot of partners continually coming back to the AppExchange, it begs the question, why? But again, can you guess what it is? It's not fist bumps, but it's relationships. Again, people like Jennifer, they've already put in the groundwork. They've built the relationships at Salesforce. They know how to navigate the sales org. They know who on the marketing team they need to contact if there's a problem with their listing, and they have an advantage. They have a leg up. So they don't have to spend time going and building relationships. All they need to focus on is growing their company and building. So again, it's really clear to see why relationships are a fundamental part of any partnership. So the next two lessons learned I want to talk about are really critical in being able to build those relationships. And the first one is around understanding your customers' needs. So if we think about SaaS partnerships and the reason why companies come together in the first place in SaaS, it's most likely because your customers are asking you to, right? Usually on the technology front, they want an integration of some sort. But I see this every day. Majority of the inbound leads that I get of partners who want to become an AppExchange partner, they're doing so because the customers raised their hand and said, hey, I need you to build an integration between your solution and Salesforce. So it's great that these partners are coming to us, that they recognize that there's a need and a desire for their customers for this integration, but the good thing about it is that they're actually acting on it. They're doing something about it because that's ultimately what's going to preserve their relationship with their customers. And applying this concept to PR, by nature, PR is a client or a customer-driven industry. PR people are the middlemen and women that are brokering stories between their clients and the press. Now, and so you have to really understand what your customers' needs are. What are their goals? What's the story that they want to tell in order for you to effectively pitch that story? So my favorite example of how this came into my life in PR was when I was already at Salesforce. I was already running AppExchange PR, and I had a very interesting interaction with one of my internal clients at the time. If you're a partner here, you probably know who she is. Her name is Layla Secca. And if you've met her, you're never gonna forget her. I think this quote really encapsulates who she is. She's bold, she's direct. She will never sugarcoat what she feels or thinks. But so I'm in this meeting with Layla, a bunch of other AppExchange execs. We're going through our plan for the year. What are the stories we're gonna tell? What are our goals? I had a few more cool marketing slides to show. But we're talking, and everything's going well, and all of a sudden she blurts out in the middle of the meeting. She's like, "We need to make AppExchange like Candy Crush." And I'm like, what? Like Candy Crush? It was the thing sweeping the nation at the time, but I had no idea what she was talking about. So instead of looking at her crazy and just kind of being like, what are you doing, Layla? I started asking questions. I dug in. Why do you think AppExchange is comparable to Candy Crush? What's your goal for doing this or for putting that message out there? And what I really got to understand was that all she wanted to do was simplify the conversation around enterprise app development. She wanted to take it from a concept up here that only developers know or tech-savvy people know and put it into terms that everybody could understand in something like Candy Crush that was, again, very popular at the time. So after getting to the heart of it, after really understanding what she wanted to do with that, what did we do? Well, this is one of my proud PR moments. We actually placed a story in Wired that was around AppExchange and Candy Crush. Now, unfortunately, this channel is no longer live on the Wired website, so I was not able to share the live link with you. But I did dig up the email from our PR agency telling us that the coverage has hit. And to this day, I'm still amazed that we were able to place an article that says, literally, what can Candy Crush teach enterprise app developers? So it all started from kind of that moment of understanding with Layla. And 7 years later at Salesforce, I've worked on and off with her, and we've built a great relationship. I still consider her one of my mentors to this day. And it all stemmed from, again, being able to dig in, understand what her real needs were. And as a result of that, we built a relationship, and she started to trust me. And that's really what takes me to my final point and lesson learned in my career progression, and that's around trust and transparency. Now, all of us here, we work in partnerships in SaaS, right? So we know when you're in an ecosystem, when you're in a marketplace, it really works best when it's open, when it's competitive, and when it's transparent. Because when you're doing those three things, you're putting the customer at the heart of everything. You're giving them choice. You're letting them choose the solutions that they need for their business versus trying to force them into one vendor or another. And again, when you put the customer first, when you lead with that transparency and openness, that's what makes an ecosystem work the best. And transparency in PR is also, very important. And if any of you, have been in PR or are looking to get into it, if there's one guiding principle I can tell you, it's this: just don't lie. It's pretty simple. Don't do it. It's not worth it. And whether you're pitching a reporter on a story or you're setting expectations with your clients, you have to lead from a place of authenticity and transparency. That's very critical. And especially as a PR professional, your reputation's at stake. So we talked about those relationships that PR people make with reporters and things like that. One lie and all that goes down the drain. All those relationships are gone. So you really need to, remember transparency. Remember that ultimately leads to trust. And that's why it's so important. And no one knows this more than we do at Salesforce. So trust is and has always been our #1 value. We do this in the technology and the infrastructure that we provide and also in the communications that we do with our customers. So this is so important to us. We actually have a website. This is trust.salesforce.com. You can go there anytime, see our real-time status updates and performance. But again, the reason why we put so much effort into trust and transparency is because we know that without the trust of our customers, without the trust of our partners, we're nothing. And ultimately, success is built on trust. So, to wrap things up, I've learned a lot in my career progression from, a PR intern to AppExchange Partnerships today. But what I challenge all of you to do is think about, the three things we talked about: building relationships, understanding your customer needs, and leading from a place of trust and transparency. And not just your partnership roles, but think about how this could apply to every relationship or every partnership you're in, because ultimately that'll help you in your professional life. So thank you all for having me. Again, I think we're going to open it up for questions, but I'll be around for another hour or so. If anyone wants to connect, you can find me on Twitter, you can talk. But thank you again for letting me share my story.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So one of the interesting things about being in PR is that, of course, you learn how to empathize with the other person or to craft a message. But that's a lot about what partnerships is about, too, because you're working with relationships. So what part of your PR training do you think applies to working with all these people?
So again, by nature, it's a relationship building exercise. So a lot of times when you're a PR professional, there's a number of things that you do. We do a lot of kind of one-on-ones. So I think being able to actually be out there and pitching PR people, doing that research myself, right, and understanding again, what does a reporter cover. When I meet with reporters one-on-one, actually taking the time to ask, okay, what are your personal interests? Or I'll look at their Twitter. Doing kind of the research and understanding who they are first really has helped me empathize, helped me incorporate that into the professional relationships we've had. So I think, again, it really is about, taking that extra effort. And being a marketer, too, you always have to know your audience, right? So a lot of that comes into play in terms of, again, researching, understanding who you're talking to, and then tailoring whatever conversation you have for that person.
Fantastic. I'm sure there's some questions about the AppExchange and Hana, so who's got the mic? Yeah, hands up for questions. Meanwhile, while people are thinking of one. So there's a lot of changes going on at the AppExchange this year. So what's going on?
Well, we have a lot of good things coming up. I think, at Dreamforce last year, we had a number of many exciting announcements coming. A lot of things in terms of the technology that we provide to our partners. So one of the things that we talked about was analytics. So we pride ourselves on getting feedback from our partners and what do you need to succeed. So analytics and getting more details on data around the listing traffic that you have on AppExchange, or how are people using your app. So there's some good things coming around that. Again, we're on the event circuit right now too. So we're about to be all over the world. If you are in any parts of the world that the Salesforce is, I would highly encourage you to come and join us. Again, I mentioned there we recently got 6 million installs last year. A lot of new things coming onto the store in the coming months too. So I would encourage you guys to check out AppExchange or come to one of our events and hear live from us.
Anyone with a question?
No questions?
All right, thank you so much.
Cool. Well, thank you for having me, Sunir.
No, it's so great. So wonderful. Thank you so much.